and gentlemen, welcome to another outstanding segment of Mulligans. Sorry we've been away for a little while, but we have obviously a brand new, beautiful studio here at Butler Community College, Andover. We'll get into discussion about that. And I'm going to turn it over to my lovely wife, who is going to give us the synopsis of today's events and what's going to take place and what our topic is about. Shannie?
So today's topic is really cool because it's something that everybody loves to receive it, but they really struggle to extend it. And that's grace.
Oh, boy.
But we do have a special guest today.
Not my strong point.
We do have a special guest. You want to introduce him?
I will. This guy who just popped up on camera is a part of Butler Community College, and Tyler Nordman, and has been a friend of ours for some time. And Tyler is an extraordinary human being, a great dad who has to show a lot of grace because he has small kids and a very understanding wife. Your wife probably knows more about grace than anybody, right? But Tyler, give me your title and what you do here.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on today, guys. This is awesome. Tyler Nordman, the Director of Creative Media and Content here at Butler Community College. And so what I do is I get to create cool stuff, including things inside this new podcast studio on our Andover campus. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of video work, different things for the athletic teams, the fine arts events, graduations, nurses, pinnings, all those things we get to kind of cover and produce and just create cool content for.
And if people want to have access to this, they can rent this play. Can they do something like that?
Yeah. So this just opened up in the fall. Really launched it in January is when it actually got completed. So we haven't had a ton of rentals yet, but yeah, anybody's welcome to come in and use this space, specifically students and faculty members, staff members, but it is open to the public, similar to your guys' situation, coming in, utilizing this great space and showcasing some of the awesome resources we have for our students, staff, and community members here at Butler.
Well, we truly appreciate it. And just so you know, our podcast is called Mulligans. It's about second opportunities and that sort of thing. Golf, I need a lot of opportunities, and you play golf as well. We're going to be playing the same event this weekend. But Shannie, let's get started with our topic today of grace.
You know, I was just thinking before we get started, how ironic is it that we started the podcast? We had a couple of guests on. We had several guests that we couldn't actually produce it because the sound, which we had all new equipment, we had new microphones, new video, everything, and the sound wasn't quite good enough. So we're doing a mulligan on Mulligans, and we're starting over with a new studio. So thank you so much.
Bet.
It's a blessing to us, and we just want to thank you for that.
You bet. Happy to have you guys here. It's awesome.
So I'm going to butcher this story, but because it's been years since I've read this book. I believe it was in 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders, maybe one of those books. But there was a story in the book that talked about this man who went to church, and he's there with his family, and there's this guy in front of him, and his son is like really acting up, and he's just, interrupting the service. He's acting out like you wouldn't believe. And so finally, the guy gets frustrated enough that he taps on his shoulder and he says, excuse me, but can you do something here? Because it's really interrupting us and it's kind of distractive. And the guy starts crying. He said, I'm really sorry. He said, I just lost my wife. He just lost his mother. And we're trying to figure this out. And we're doing the best we can with this. And it goes back to grace, right? So many times we look at individuals and we want to judge them immediately. And we want to say, oh, well, they should have their kid under control or whatever the situation might be. But when in reality, we don't know what's going on in their life.
Well, I do that with traffic. When I get pissed off at somebody in traffic, I'm like, you know what? They either have to be somewhere quicker than I do, or they're just having a bad day. We've all been there where somebody's flipped you off, and like if you're going too slow or whatever, we had that.
Yeah,
out in Colorado we did.
But think about it. What if they're on their way to the hospital because they just found out that their spouse has cancer, or someone just had a heart attack, and we don't stop and think long enough, I believe, and give people enough grace in situations like this.
Yeah, I think everybody gets caught up in that, just their own life so quickly. Hey, I got to be here. I got to do these things, and you don't stop. Just a few seconds is all it takes to think about, okay, let's put myself in their shoes real quick and see, maybe they're not having the best day. Maybe something big did happen to them. So kind of just taking a step back in moments like that and saying, okay, where can I show some grace and have a little patience or what it might be.
So, being the competitive person I am, like you, being involved, you were, former assistant athletic director at the college. So you were heavily involved in the athletic programs, being competitive yourself on the golf course and your other venues that you compete in. I coached for 15 years. I've always been very competitive. My kids were competitive. I didn't want to lose at anything. And my wife, then I meet this blonde thing next to me, and, she constantly was saying, you need to have a little more grace in your life. You need to be appreciative of what God's blessed you with and this and that, and I never stopped and smelled the roses when I was younger, and I wish I would have. I met some amazing people at a young age. I interviewed some amazing people, but there's people that I had in my life that I needed to get rid of. There's people in my life that probably required that a long time ago that I kept around. Now I have the circle of people in my friendship and nucleus of my portfolio that I allow grace to. There's times I allowed grace and I just got walked on, and I guess it's a catch-22, because I was telling you, Tyler, Kobe Bryant was one of those guys. You screwed him over one time, you were dead to him. And, and I was kind of that way. I mean, it's like, and so there's times where people just have down moments in your life and they may not treat you accordingly to how you feel you should be treated.
Right.
But to them, that's the best they got. And, we need to allow a little grace at time.
Yeah.
I think we always need to allow grace.
Oh.
I do.
That's where
I do. I mean, I think that when it comes to grace, we always need to expect the best of someone instead of assuming that their actions are out of hate or something like that. Just give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, truly, what is it going to hurt us to do that? Now, that's what you're talking about, I think, is a totally different subject, because at some point, if someone treats you poorly over and over and over again, you can still forgive them and give them grace. But maybe you don't put yourself in those situations as often.
I mean, my point is, how many times you get kicked in the groin before you say enough's enough?
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, your thoughts.
Yeah. And, being the competitor you are, it happens a lot where heat of the moment things and games and contests and on the golf course for sure. But it is tough as a competitor to really sit back and look at the whole picture and say, is this game worth this? Or is this game worth that? And being able to just take a step back and give the grace to whoever it may be, your competitor, your opponent, whatever it is. It's hard to do in the moment.
It's funny because you guys are very, very competitive, and I wasn't. I was never involved in sports. I mean, I talk about God's sense of humor putting me with Scott, because I wasn't into sports at all. And, I'm the type of person that if somebody goes out there and they give it their all, then they won.
Mm-hmm.
They're both laughing.
Not always the case. Yeah.
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, because some people just will never be able to perform at the level to be the number one in everything.
Right.
But if they're continually improving, that's got to be a win, in my book, at least. No,
and there's so many different levels of grace, work environment.
Yes.
Somebody has a different religious belief than you. In today's society, we're so quick to pull a knife or pull a gun and shoot somebody or stab somebody. We're so busy to just turn and snap and cuss you out in the parking lot or this and that. I mean, our society is really messed up right now. I mean, it is jacked up. And, you have two little kids, right?
Yep.
2 little boys.
Yep.
And, we have 3 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters and a grandson. And I truly worry about what world we're going to leave them someday. I truly do. And maybe Shannie's right. Maybe we need to show a little more grace in society, because we're so quick to pull the trigger and go the opposite direction of what God has taught us to be.
Yeah. So what is grace? What does grace mean to you guys?
I'll let Tyler go first and I'll copy what he
Well, when I think about grace, I think about my grandma Nordman, who absolutely showed grace at all times. As a young kid, she's passed now, but she is the epitome of grace to me when I hear that word. My grandma Nordman, no matter how you did, she attended almost everything we played. She had, I don't know how many grandkids total, but she was there all the time. And no matter how you did, what the outcome was, she was there. And she was caring and loved you no matter what. So when I think of Grace, I think about her and how she treated not only us and her family, but everybody she was around. So it was special. And she was a very special lady. So that's what I think about when I think about Grace.
And see, I'm sorry, honey, but my story. I'll share my story, and my father will be turning 80 next week, and bless him for still being alive and I talk to him every day. But my father grew up in an environment where his grandfather pretty much ran a company in our town, a small town, and his mom had a stroke when he was 16, so he had to quit sports altogether and take care of my grandmother while my grandfather ran a business. So my father started, he worked one job for 47 years.
Wow.
And he took over. Yeah. So he lived his athletic career through me. I was the oldest. I had one younger brother.
Vicariously.
And so I could score 5 touchdowns in a game, and I may have threw a pick or something, just something, or overthrew somebody for the 6th touchdown, whatever. And that's what we talk about for an hour. I mean, that's what we, how we got to get better and blah, 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 and this and that. And I'm like, we won 42-7, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I'm not knocking him because he made me who I am. He made me tougher. He made me, competitive as hell. And I got it. And what was bad about that is I didn't show grace to my oldest son. I regret that every day. I was the exact same way. And it caused us a lot of heartache.
Mm-hmm.
It caused him to quit football for 6 weeks. And the football coach called me, like, your kid didn't show up for practice today. Like, what? And, this was in the summer, fortunately. Yeah. And so, I had to change. I had to change from being that coach and that to being a dad and being there for them and supporting whatever they did to more your philosophy. But yeah, so I not saying I totally don't want to take away from anything my childhood and growing up, because I loved my childhood. My parents are great. They're both still alive, and we have a great time. Not saying that at all, but it was just a different deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I didn't have that grace and nurturing so much as like, you gotta keep grinding, you gotta keep going. But it's developed my work ethic, and it's developed that. So, I mean, I guess grace is in different forms of time, because I appreciate what they did for me. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people probably wouldn't like that type of grace in today's society.
Yeah. So to me, I think that grace is giving favor to someone who's unworthy of it. Because when I think about God, I mean, that's what God does for us, is he gives us favor, even though every single day we're sinners. I have a tough time making it through it. Actually, I can't make it through a day without sinning in some way, right? But I have God's grace. And I think the beautiful thing about it is it's knowing that we're not going to be judged. We're not going to be put down. We're not going to be labeled, because we all have a journey to go through. And some of us have to. I mean, Scott and I are a little bit hard-headed, so we've had to go through some lessons a couple times over and over again. But our journeys are different because we're all unique. So someone might be acting in a way that you don't agree with, you don't, condone, but you can still give them grace, because that's a part of their journey. And like you said, it might be that exact thing that everybody else looks down upon that makes them a strong individual, that they end up and that creates them the person that God created them to be.
Tyler, what's you being married and 2 small children, were away a lot of times with your job. I mean, there's probably times where you had to show some grace for what your wife, sometimes probably being a single parent, because you being, not saying
right,
bad, but I get it. I mean, I have a lot of coaching buddies in the industry, and they're 80, 90 hours a week during football season. And the wife's like, hey, can you, you're missing little Susie's recital. I mean, this and that. And there's a lot of factors that go into a relationship, especially when you're in a environment like coaching, being around students,
right?
They require a lot of attention.
It does. And I'll tell you a quick story. So excuse me, right before we took the job here at Butler, we moved from Highland, Northeast Kansas.
Yeah.
Moved on a Sunday. My wife was 9 months pregnant with our oldest. Started at Butler Monday, Went to the hospital Tuesday night, had Tucker Wednesday morning. So 3 days, not even 3 days into the job here at Butler, we had our first boy. Was in the hospital a couple days. Well, we had first home football game that Saturday night. So where was I going to be?
Yeah.
I had to be the football game. So saying that now, fast forward 3.5 years later, they come to all the events. They love it. We just got back from a week-long trip in Alabama with our softball team for the national softball tournament. So it's been a lot of fun. But yes, my wife has really done a ton the last 3.5 years. It's tough because in our industry, you're gone a lot. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of games, a lot of travel. It just happens.
So how do you show your wife grace then when you have down? I mean,
not as good as I should. That's for sure. There's times where I think my job's the most important thing, and it's not. In 20 years, my kids aren't going to care how many softball national tournaments we won, or basketball games, or what our record was. They're going to remember where was Dad. And so, taking on this new role that I started in January, Dad's around a lot more, and he's going to be able to. And I talk to a lot of people in this business, and they talk about a lot of the things they've missed. Yeah, they have a lot of championships and some really cool moments in their life and their career, but everybody always mentions, hey, I missed a lot of my kids is this or that. I don't want to be there. And so kind of off subject of grace, but yeah, I'm trying to be there with them a lot more too, because they're going to remember where was Dad throughout all this. Now that they're a little older, they're 3 and 2. I say a little older than when they were right when I started. They're able to do a lot more with us, and it's been a blast.
So I think, not to interrupt real quick, Shannie, but I think one of the things that correlates with grace is regret. And I have a lot of regret in my life. There's times where I mistreated people, did just bad things. And I mean, not criminal. I'm just saying just how I treated people, including my wife. I mean, I was a turd when I first got married. I mean, I just flat was bad. And, I shouldn't be sitting here right now, but she showed grace, and she saw a person I could be, and she stuck it out, and she said that all along. But I don't want anybody, I think regrets are so, especially for a dad, that I'm glad you saw that early, because I mean, they're going to be molded for the next 10 years, and it's going to, that next 10 years is going to be their character for the rest of their life, how they become a father, and a lot of those things. So I'm glad you saw that, because that's a lesson I didn't learn. I didn't until it was too late. I went through a divorce.
I think if we talked about grace more often, and if we made it a daily habit to give grace to people, even if it's somebody who cuts you off, or, the little things. Even the little things. Somebody's running inside and slams a door on your face. Well, we don't know what's going on with them. I think if we start practicing grace more often, then relationships would be a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Because we put people up on pedestals, and that's why I started this out. Everybody loves to receive grace, but they struggle with extending it, because we want to judge everyone. We want to look at everybody and say, you should be doing this. Well, by whose playbook, right? Yeah. Who's writing that playbook? So I go back to, if we start treating people, I like to think of it like this. When somebody's doing something, especially if they're acting up, right? Acting out or something like that. People don't act out just to act out. They don't do it just to get attention. And I'm going to go back to when I was younger, because I was molested by a family member and I was raped at an early age. And my defense mechanism became, I would not let anyone take anything from me. So I would give it to him freely. And everyone just thought that, they would label me, and they thought all these bad things about me, when I would, I'd go to church and I'd be like, God, this isn't who I am, but I have to be this way. And I think if people would have given me a little bit of grace and come to me and said, why are you doing this? Maybe it would have been, sooner that I could have addressed the actual issue, because I think everybody is good-natured at heart, but they're dealing with something. So the way I like to look at it is, they're doing the best with the tools and resources that they have, and with what life has given them.
I had, with the help of Shannie, so I have a younger brother, 4 years younger than me, and for 8 years, nobody in the family talked to him. He disowned all of us. Mom and Dad left our house 3 years ago and was in a bad car wreck, and they were in a hospital. Dad had 12 broken ribs. Shannie flew out at midnight, landed in St. Louis, drove to Effingham, Illinois, and stayed with them until she could drive him home because they had no car. Stayed with him a week. I remember calling my brother saying, he lived a mile from them, said, can you go down and check on Mom and Dad? Shannie's gotten, he was not my job. And move it to 7 years later, or move it, that was 3 years ago that happened, but for 8 years we didn't talk. Moved it to last year. Wife leaves him. Kids are struggling with him and his 2 daughters, and he has to move in with my parents. And, I had to show grace because, and I talked to my parents about it, because right away I'm like, why would you let him in? I mean, he disowned us for 8 years. Yeah. And I'm freely to talk about this because he knows it's true. If he listens to this, it is what it is. And we've come full circle.
Yeah.
We
have a great relationship.
We text and talk now, but that was hard for me to do.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing here, it's like, you don't know what he is going through. And I get it, but that was the toughest thing for me to do. Cause I remember it's what's that saying? Don't just forgive, but don't forget.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time doing that at times. And every time I would hear him, I would hear the things that he said to me, and just, it was frustrating, but we're at a good spot now. And I'm sure there's other people that have had this experience with a family member in the past. We've had different family situations in the past, that's been a struggle.
And if there is somebody listening who is facing this, I encourage you. I always go back to the Bible. Everything I do, I go back to the Bible. And like, for example, the story that you just shared with your brother, I go back to the prodigal son. They welcomed him home with open arms. I mean, he took everything as if his parents were dead. And he took all of his inheritance before they even died. But yet they threw a party for him.
They slaughtered the best cow or pig or
they
like
welcomed him with open arms. And I think to me, that's what it is to be more Christ-like. So if there's somebody listening and you're holding a grudge, or, you're finding it hard not to judge someone, what I tell Scott is when you can clean up all your own flaws, and, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones type of scenario, when you figure out how to go without sinning yourself, then go ahead and judge somebody else. Until then, give them grace, because we are going to mess up one day. I mean, especially in society, you were talking about society now and our kids growing up, and they're thrown with so much. Right will become wrong and wrong will become right. And that's kind of what we're facing now. But if we teach them to throw grace in there, I think we'll be in a much better situation. We'll be at a much better place.
What's your biggest fears as being a young parent these days? What's the biggest fears for you raising a family and that sort of thing? I mean, we're grandparents now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, I'm sure you thought about it when you were around my age, but just what's the world going to look like when they're my age or older and have kids and grandkids of their own? What's going to be like? I don't know.
Yeah.
I can
going to school kind of right now is like, as many things you see around school shootings and stuff. It's like, that's kind of scary stuff to let your kids, everything just, out of your control. So that's one of my biggest fears for sure.
I can honestly say when Parker was younger, I didn't have that fear. I mean, it's just been here recently that it's become a fear for me for our grandchildren.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Things are changing quick.
And it happens in places that you wouldn't think would happen. I mean, in smaller communities and that sort of thing, suburban areas. But
we also have some amazing people in this world.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to really focus my attention on is those people that stand out. Like you were talking earlier when you were talking about grace, it's those individuals that can change the world just a couple people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just a couple of people, because then they can pick up on those habits, and it's like a domino effect. And I love that.
You know, one thing that comes to my mind is in the past, people that would hurt me I would try to make life miserable for them. In the last couple of years, it's like, you know, the old saying where Shannie used to, when I was in bad shape, she's like, I'm not going to be your punching bag. I'm here to listen to you, but not physically,
Yeah.
but just verbally.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one thing where, you know, that's one thing where you have to really show some grace to at times, where if somebody snaps at you, it might not be you. There's a cumulative things have built up, and you just happen to be in the path at that time.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're talking to a guy who made a therapist quit. Retire. Seriously, that's not a lie.
Yeah.
He's like, you scare me. I don't want you back. And quit.
I'm done.
Went to Spirit.
Quit being
I work with airplanes. I'll be
Quit.
better off.
they don't talk back, right?
When I used to have my radio show, I mean, people called in for 30 minutes. Like, you actually, I swear to God, yeah, he quit. He's like, I don't think you need to come back anymore. You scare me.
Yeah.
Like, well, I guess I'll find someone else to talk to. But
But
really,
it was through grace that you changed.
It was in a lot of prayer, a lot of scripture. We go to New Spring Church. Pastor Mark has been very good to us. As we've had some good conversations. You know, then, you know, 2 years ago when I was told I had a year or two to live, that changed my perspective on a lot of things. There's a lot of worse things in the world for me to bitch about or be pissed off about. You know, and you're laying there and you're thinking, you know, you only got a year or two and you're going to be done. So there's things that made me put a lot of things in perspective.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it's one event that changes that thought process.
I agree. So as we're talking about back to your kids, what's one of the worst things they could do right now that would just throw you over the edge?
You name it. We just got back from a week-long trip in Alabama, staying in hotels and stuff. It was tough. Had to show a lot of patience and grace there.
Be a Blue Dragon fan, probably.
Yeah. when we ask them who they like, and they say Blue Dragons. Yeah. Tucker, the oldest one right now, is huge into. He loves sports. He's very hand-eye coordination is amazing. He's very talented.
Like
his younger brother, not so much yet.
Like his mom.
And he'll just run and just completely wipe him out.
Yeah.
He loves hockey, so he checks him and just takes him out. It's like, Tucker, what are you doing, buddy? Come on. You know, and that's always tough because then Boston's crying or hurt. You got to, you know, take care of Tucker and punish him and things like that. So that's tough. But then obviously the church scenarios, when we go to church and they're just loud and you don't know what to do as a parent.
Like that.
Whoa,
Yeah.
Where is that volume?
That
Holy
was great.
cow.
So you're trying to handle that, and people are looking around, but yeah.
No,
they're challenging, as you know.
They are. And I think back to, you were talking about a family member. I think back to my Aunt Jamie when we were younger. My cousin, boy, he was a pistol. And that kid would jump on all the furniture.
Aunt Jamie's word because she don't cuss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Other
exactly.
people use a different word. Yeah, you pistol.
He would jump all over the furniture. I mean, he had so much energy. And for most people, it would drive them crazy, right? It didn't Uncle Mike and Aunt Jamie. They just,
yeah,
it's okay.
He's full of energy.
And and just gave him grace and love. And today he's an author. He grew up to be such an amazing young man. Yes, very creative. But I admire that because it was more about letting them figure out who they are. And they allowed that grace to them so that they could do that. Because so many times we think about, I mean, honestly, when you're sitting in church, Tyler, and your kids are being loud, are you thinking about them being loud, or are you thinking about the people looking at them?
Right, you're thinking about the other people.
Exactly.
Do something with that kid, you know?
Right.
We had the same situation. I remember getting our oldest, Jordan. You know, he had a lot of energy and wouldn't sit in his chair and then, we're gonna what do you got, OCD and that sort of thing. And we're gonna get him tested and put him on medicine for a while, and it gave him ticks and everything. And he's out there playing baseball and he's twitching and everything. And I go home and cry because I'm like, what do we, So finally we thought, we're going to try to just let him grow out of this thing. And by the grace of God, he's a wonderful dad, married a wonderful girl, and they have 3 kids now. And he's a fireman, paramedic, and it turned out great. And our middle son, when he was born, we have a thing called the Styles head. We all wear like size 8 baseball hats.
Our dog is a
You can
Styles
relate,
too.
right?
I'm not that big.
Well,
My kids are.
yeah. And so they actually checked him for, like his abnormal head size and this and that. And I remember him coming back and the doctor saying, because he's in like the I didn't know there was such a thing, like 105th percentile of growth, and his body was not catching up with it. He just had a good sized noggin. And the doctor said, he just got a lot of brains in there. He's fine. And he checked all these tests. And, now he's a medic in the Army and just passed an Arabic. He had taken Arabic language, and our youngest son is, he had his issues too with the long hair and just being a rebel and everything. And now he's wonderful as well. So my point is to parents, they're going to go through these phases. You're going to have troubles and they're going to be called to the principal's office. That's part of growing up and life lessons. I think not everybody's an angel like us 3, and
not me. You talk for yourself there, because I'm not.
So, I mean, no, but I'm just saying, I'm just trying to say, there's times where you get tested, and as a parent, as a human being, and it's how you respond, I think, is a lot of how people act.
So I've got 2 more things I want to point out. First of all is I love talking about grace as God's favor. I talk about it all the time. We have God's favor. No doubt about it. Every time we go anywhere, we have special treatment. Front row parking. It is God's favor. And Lord knows I don't deserve it. But I think the more I focus on God's favor and the more I talk about it out loud, the more favor we get. Because we attract whatever we put out there. So if we're putting negative out there, then we'll get more of it. If we're constantly mad at people and angry and not giving grace, we're going to get more of that.
It's like the new car deal. You buy a new car, you see that car everywhere around. I mean, it's a very similar
I've seen
thing.
this color.
That's exactly what it is.
White Explorer,
That's a great point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But I think that the hardest thing with grace to do is to extend it to ourselves. And it's really important to realize, yes, we make stupid decisions sometimes. Yes, maybe we should handle a situation a little bit different. I should give my husband more grace. But we are our worst critics.
There's no doubt.
And I think that when we learn to give others grace, in turn, we slowly learn to give ourselves grace also. And I think that's so important. Because it's a part of learning and growing is to make mistakes.
Well, and just for the mental aspect of life, I think there's sometimes where you're your biggest critic. I know you are.
Yeah,
you are.
Yeah. You threw him under the bus. Holy cow! Yeah,
that's how it is.
Yeah. And you always you want better for your family, you want better for yourself, and you always wonder, and except just enjoying. I mean, you have a beautiful home, you have 2 great kids, you have a great wife. Sometimes we think, I know I was. It's like, I need to make more. I need to be better. Blah,
so
blah, blah.
Why is it that competitive individuals, because I just put this together, almost everybody I know that is like, no, you do me wrong once, you're done. I'm done. You're out. But most of the people that are like that are very competitive. What is it about being competitive that takes away that equation?
I don't really have a good answer for that. I mean, just part of being a winner, I guess. I don't know.
Do you guys?
And I don't think that's right. But
do you guys see grace as a weakness?
I used to.
Yeah.
I felt soft. feel like you're showing a weakness to them, that they're, the people that you're pissed off about that backstabbed you once, going to use that to their advantage. Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, I would have been sitting in Butler Community College doing a podcast,
right,
in a room with it's purple. I mean, I'm, I where I'm from.
Yeah,
Okay.
Where I went to college.
This is a huge step for you.
I
love it.
Yeah, I'm showing grace. But no, I mean, no, but seriously, I just, it's just, I don't know. I can't answer your question the way you probably wanted to, but I just felt all along that, and I was wrong too, but I was like, man, I've been good to you, or you owe me. And you know what I'm saying? And you don't show no appreciation at all, this and that. And now I'm so far ahead on lunches and dinners with people. It don't matter. We just enjoy the hospitality. I mean, just the camaraderie and fellowship. We don't care. That's the way we work. Look, we got about 5 minutes left in the segment. First of all, we want to thank Butler Community College, Tyler, and this wonderful studio. How can people, if they want to, for summer school or anything like that, if they want to get in your program, what do they need to do?
To come to school?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million ways to contact an advisor, enroll. Obviously, you can go to the website, you can call, you can come up to one of our campuses. We have an enrollment center on Rock Road, right by McConnell. Teach a lot of classes in McConnell. We have six different locations, so a lot of opportunities to get involved. A lot of programs, a lot of cool stuff like this. To get involved with at Butler, podcasting, broadcasting, sports media, stuff like that. Which is kind of some of the things I help oversee. And
Sean Boston, I mentored him for a while.
Yeah, and he was a proud Butler alum and went through our sports broadcasting, and he does really good work now. And
he's back in Hutchinson.
He is now, yeah.
So what's some of the things you want to cover real quick? You said you had a couple points.
Me?
Yeah.
I just covered them.
You got them all done?
Yeah, giving grace to yourself.
So when did you start showing more grace? Not when you said I do to me. Don't say that. I'm going to shut the mic off.
No, you opened the door. So I started showing more grace after I saw a pattern in my own life. I was on my third husband and looking at not going on to number 4. I didn't have him picked out, but looking at possibly ending my marriage again because of being treated poorly in my eyes. And I guess God just kind of opened my eyes and made me see that, maybe you're reacting. And maybe when these things happen, you're thinking too much about yourself and you're not looking at the other individual, and you're not thinking about what they're going through and why they would act the way. So at like 3:00 in the morning, the TV comes on and Joyce Meyer is blaring on the TV. And she's talking about unconditional love, which that goes back to grace. And she's talking about, how do you expect God to give you unconditional love if you don't give it to others? And it was that moment that I realized I need to change my pattern. I need to change what I'm doing. And, the message that she gave went on and it talked about favor. It talked about blessings. Sometimes we take ourselves out of the equation for blessings because we're too self-centered and we focus on ourselves and how other people's actions affect us. And it's all about us. And I got to the point where it was like, okay, it can't be about me anymore. Because when I make it all about me, I miss all those blessings. I miss out on being able to, like you and I. I mean, had I stayed the way I was and not had grace, we would not be sitting here today.
Oh, there's no doubt.
We would be divorced. And what I found was, once you push past that and once you start serving other people and thinking about others and putting others before yourself, then what happens is God's able to open up the floodgates and just say, here you go. And you get all of God's favor and you get all of God's grace. And it elevates your life like you would never imagine. And so 3:00 in the morning is where I found grace.
That's a good deal. That's a good one to end on. on behalf of Tyler and Butler Community College campus of Andover, thank you for this beautiful studio. We'll be recording here for next few weeks and getting some, as they call it in the business, some shows in the can.
Oh, is that what they call it?
That's what they say.
I never heard that, but that's okay. We'll go with that one.
And we'll do it. But thank you for another great episode of Mulligans. Like I said, if you have any topics you want us to discuss or any guests you want us to have on, feel free to contact Shannie at your coaching.
And now we'll give my number, 913-232-1187.
Okay.
Give me a call and we'll figure it out. And by the way, without grace, you can't have a mulligan.
On behalf of myself, Tyler and Shannie, good night, everybody.